Welcome to The Social Capitalist with host and Never Eat Alone co-author Tal Raz. Social Capitalist events are sponsored programming of myGreenlight, an exclusive online learning platform for relationship development skills. For more information, visit our webpage at www.mygreenlight.com. Enjoy the event.
The ability to bounce back, to absorb shocks, to persevere, to retain functionality in crisis, to endure, to adapt, survive, and succeed. So many words are conjured up by what we call mental toughness. That it could benefit anyone in any profession seems clear, but can it be learned? The answer comes to us from Mark Devine, who graduated with distinction from his SEAL training class and served on active duty for 9 years, retiring as a commander from the Navy Reserves last year. Mark is founder and CEO of U.S. Tactical Incorporated, which operates SEALFit, NavySeals.com, U.S. CrossFit, and the Unbeatable Mind Academy. And the goal of nearly all of these ventures is to forge mental toughness in his clients. Welcome, Mark. Oh, we're not getting audio, are we?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
So give us a little background on how you decided after graduating college at a small liberal arts school called Colgate to go to the SEALs, and then after that how you came up with the idea for these businesses.
Yeah, I followed the herd from Colgate University in upstate New York down to Manhattan. When I was in college, I didn't have any kind of inkling that I was going to be a SEAL. You know, my family was a business family. We have a family business in upstate New York, and so I ended up pursuing a job that sent me to NYU and landed me with Coopers & Lybrand, which is now PricewaterhouseCoopers, which was an interesting fit for me, Tal, because you know I had zero accounting experience in college. This was a new program they were trial running to forge better partners at the big 8 accounting firms, and they were going to bring people from a liberal arts school, send them to New York University to get a master's in accounting, and then we would get a couple of years of audit experience, get our CPAs, and then be these miraculously well-rounded partners someday at these accounting firms. So that's kind of what I did. I went down to New York, and within 2 years, I was absolutely hated my job. But I wasn't going to quit, and so I just plowed through and got my MBA and my CPA. Well, kind of how this ties into the SEALs, about halfway through that process, like I mentioned, I literally woke up one day and said, this is not working out for me. I didn't like the people I was working with. I saw, all sorts of greed, and everyone was mostly concerned about their paycheck and the size of their paycheck than they were about other people and about, really developing themselves and about leadership and things that I, at the time, thought were important. And so I started to think, well, maybe this is the wrong fit for me. And fortunately, I had begun a martial arts practice at a karate studio down there in Manhattan on 23rd Street called Sado Karate. And the founder of Sado Karate taught there every day, and his name was Tadashi Nakamura. I consider him my first true mentor. And in this training, we did a lot of meditation. We meditated before and after every class, and then we had a strict meditation session. It was Zen style on Thursday evenings for about an hour. And then after that, Mr. Nakamura would give us a little kind of Dharma talk, a little inspirational talk. And I call this the period where I started to polish the mirror of my soul because, during the height of this training, when I was really working hard toward my black belt, I started to really get signals from my intuition. I started to be able to listen deeply to my kind of inner voice, and these things that were really closed off for me before, for various reasons, and scientists probably will never really figure out why that little voice in our head, keeps on at such a high volume, and it's hard to kind of quiet it down. But through the silence of the meditation, I was starting to quiet that down and listen to my inner voice, and that was telling me to head in a different direction. And then kind of to make this long story a little short, the siren call that I heard were the Navy SEALs, and so I started to really investigate that and and think about it and visualize it, and sure enough, that led me into the SEAL teams.
And how did the business ideas come along? And they all seem to be related.
Say that again. I didn't quite get the question there, Tom.
How did the ideas for these businesses, and specifically building businesses around forging mental toughness, teaching it, training it, come to be?
Well, when I was in the SEALs, as I mentioned, one of the main reasons that I joined was I was really looking for a career where I could develop my own leadership capacity. I could lead people in authentic or high-risk situations, as opposed to, where there was no really shared risk. And so while I was in the SEAL teams, I already had an MBA and I was a CPA. I think I'm probably the only Navy SEAL, with that distinction. I know there's quite a few who have MBAs, but I doubt there's any other CPAs. They're not quite, they're completely different character traits. I was, paying a lot of attention to what was going on around me and thinking deeply about leadership and mental toughness. And the skills that I had learned in my martial arts training carried me so well through Navy SEAL training. I mean, I think you mentioned that I was number one in my class in Navy SEAL training, and that honor man distinction, was quite an honor, but there was a reason for it, and it's because I had learned certain skills during my martial arts training that allowed me to not only just dominate the training, but to really enjoy it day by day. Well, people were, dropping like flies and in constant misery. I mean, the Navy SEAL training program has an 80% dropout rate, and I was really enjoying it. I had a big old smile on my face every day. So what was that, right? And so I spent, as you mentioned, my first tour, I got off active duty after about 7 years because I got married, and I had to make a choice, and if the Navy had wanted me to have a wife, they would have issued me one, and so that wasn't going to work out. And I went into the reserves, so I stayed in the reserves and plugged in as a reservist after that. But I went back to the business world as an entrepreneur, which was very closely aligned. Being a SEAL is kind of like being a military entrepreneur. Everything you do is on your own. You're very creative, figuring things out. And so it made sense that I would come back into the business world as an entrepreneur. And so it was in my first few business ventures, some of which, were uglier than others, that I really started to cultivate the strategies and tactics and actually put them to paper. And then it was, I started teaching leadership at the University of San Diego as I was getting my doctorate there, that I started to really cultivate these ideas and think, hey, you know what, these need to be taught to everybody. I mean, what I learned both as a SEAL and through my martial arts training, and then later on through a deep practice of yoga, need to be kind of crafted and communicated in a manner that's more accessible to everyday people. And so that's when I conceived of the idea for teaching these principles through my business. And that's SEAL Fit, and SEAL Fit in an Unbeatable Mind.
So let's get into one in particular, which is nothing resembling any kind of corporate team building exercise or program that anyone on this call will be familiar with. Up to 40-plus hours straight with no sleep, nonstop brutal exercise, 20-mile hikes with a 50-pound rucksack. This is you have a tremendous kind of portfolio of videos showing what you put these people through, and people actually pay your company SEAL Fit to put them through this with what most people would sound like torture. Describe a little bit about how the program works and what people have to go through.
Yeah, we call that program Kokoro Camp. Kokoro is a Japanese term for warrior spirit or heart spirit. I originally designed that program for special operations candidates, for Navy SEAL wannabes who are going to go then, challenge themselves against the hardest training in the world. And that was in 2007, and I quickly, after my first event, I think even for my first event, I had 45-year-old, investment bankers calling me, and folks from all walks of life, entrepreneurs and other guys and gals actually as well, though I haven't had as many women as I would like. But folks calling me say, hey, can civilians do this? And I thought about it, and I said, well, sure, why not? Should we create a separate program for you? And they said, we don't want a separate program. we want to do this side by side with the young guns, because when I was 21 or 28, I thought about doing this, but, I didn't. I chose a different path. Or, I was a competitive athlete, and I've been running triathlons, and I do this and that, but I really need a challenge. This sounds terrific. And so I said, okay, well, let's give it a shot. And so that's when we opened it up to civilians. Now, there's no question, Tal, that, these folks are trained athletes. I mean, the people are coming to the Kokoro camp. I mean, I guess you'd call that the pointy edge of my spear. That's the hardest program I run, so it's not for everybody. However, I believe everybody could do it if they set their mind on it and they decided they wanted to do it. I had a 54-year-old spine doctor trained for 2 years for that program. He came, he did an exceptional job. And what I find, the program is designed after the Navy SEAL Hell Week, but we deliberately teach principles of mental toughness, warrior spirit, and leadership and team building throughout the event. And we have a saying that people meet themselves for their first time during this event. It is no question like a spiritual, enlightening experience for everybody who goes through it. I mean, there's no question that the accelerated learning and the depth of emotional breakthrough that you require, and learning how to press on when your physical body is pretty much at its limits. And these are the principles and things that we teach. And I'll say one thing here is I do realize that most folks on this call are going to look at that program and say, well, that's interesting, but there's no way in hell I would ever do it. And because we heard that all the time, and I said, well, okay, let me create a program where I can teach this stuff and people can do it in their living room and start to figure this out and start to train, and then maybe we'll spark a fire in their belly, and then eventually they'll want to come to either a program like that or at least start doing some more serious physical training. And so that's where the Unbeatable Mind program came from that you referenced earlier, and that is really about teaching this stuff without kicking someone, for 50 hours straight.
But there's clearly a link. Extreme physical exercise is clearly a really efficient vehicle for you to teach these principles of mental toughness. Why is that?
I take it back to the warrior traditions, like the Spartans and the samurai. The mind-body connection is so intimate that we just don't know where the two kind of merge and blend. But I believe that it's just it's all over the place. The heart, right, has been recently proven to have about 60% of its material is the same as the neurological connections in our brain, and so we have this heart mind, which is really one of the things we try to open up and train in Kokoro camp. And that heart mind, has an intense energy around it. It can extend for many feet, whereas the power of your brain is very limited to press out and to influence other people. And so the physical body needs to be moved and challenged and energized in order to access the fullest capacity of your mind, your total, the totality of your mind. I'm not just talking about your left brain, cognitive brain. We certainly need to use that, and in the West, we've really dominated that, and we train that very well in our schools. But what we don't train very well is that right brain, that intuitiveness, that ability to use our creative subconscious, and that heart-centered approach to decision-making, which is really includes the team first and not just what's about me. And so these are the things that through the physical training of Kokoro Camp, we expose very quickly. You cannot get through Kokoro Camp as a Rambo. You can't get there as the toughest guy on the street. Those guys are the first ones to quit. You've got to extend yourself to your teammates. You've got to be there for them. And guess what? When you do that, all of a sudden you got 15 or 20 people watching your back at the same time, and that bond and that shared risk and that shared accountability just goes through the roof. So the physical aspect of it, like you said, is very, very effective. It creates an accelerated learning environment. And the good news is you don't have to make it so hard. I mean, it works even if you scale it down dramatically. And I've worked with people in my CrossFit gym who are 65 and coming to us after a 20-year hiatus, and we see some of the same types of breakthroughs. It just might take a little bit longer, and we've got to be a little bit more systematic with the way we train them, right? We don't throw the kitchen sink at them right away, obviously.
Digging deeper into this idea of a breakthrough, I saw that you, on one of your clips, you mentioned that people are capable of many, many times more than what they think they're capable of doing. So, obviously, kind of pushing them physically is one of the, it's a way of showing them that, and about showing how mental toughness is about a belief, and that we underachieve because we accept a belief about ourselves due to something that you gave an acronym to called BOO. Can you explain that? What does that mean?
Sure. I call this the 20X factor. And so this is one of the things I learned in Hell Week. Hell Week Navy SEAL training is 5 days nonstop training. It's, Kokoro on steroids. And that's no sleep, right? And so you're dealing with that sleep deprivation and that nonstop physical training. And, by the end of it, you just like, wow, how did I do that? And it creates a new sense of what's possible. And I call that the 20X. You're all of a sudden faced with this new person who knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're capable of about 20 times or more than you previously thought you were capable of. So peeling the onion on that is, why was I previously unaware that I was capable of that much, physical, mental, and emotional accomplishment? And it's partly because I've never been exposed to it, for sure, but also partly because of what I call this background of obviousness. This background of obviousness is those belief systems and undercurrents in our subconscious that are so obvious that we don't notice them. And so one of them is, that going to the gym and working out for an hour 3 times a week is physical training. And most people on this call would say, yeah, I kind of do that. That's good. And I'll tell you right now, that's not physical training. That's a bare minimum, and it's better than nothing for sure, but it's just kind of working out. Working out is barely stemming the tide of inertia or entropy, and it's not training your body and mind to meet its fullest potential. Its God-given potential, this human machine of ours is unbelievable. I mean, there's an athlete and a warrior in everybody. It's essentially part of our DNA. It's hard-coded, but we've been, kind of brought up in a society that has led us to believe that, hard work is really not for everybody. It's only for a few select people like first responders, and it's okay to just kind of get by and to, just go to the gym or to eat all that junk food and not take responsibility and to blame it on society. And that background or that belief system is really dangerous and needs to be, rooted out and eliminated. How do you do that? That's a whole discussion. We could spend weeks on that topic, but there's all sorts of other boo items. One is, just around, and you'll know this well, you've had other speakers talk about it, but around abundance and money. And this kind of ties into the whole idea of, are you really a positive person, or are you negative, right? And so it's a very, very fine line between being, positive and negative, and it has nothing to do with the words that come out of your mouth. It has everything to do with the energy charge of your body, right? And so, you may, listen to a tape from Napoleon Hill and say, I need positive self-talk, and that positive self-talk is certainly very important, but you also have to have a positive self-feeling, and you need to cultivate that feeling and that vibration at a very deep level so that your entire being, literally is vibrating with positive energy. And you can feel that when people walk into a room who are truly positive versus people who walk in the room who are kind of neutral or slightly negative, but may have some kind of happy, statement like, good to see you, or whatever. They may sound positive, but they're not projecting that energy. And so that is tied to our underlying belief systems as well, such as, growing up with a feeling or a dialogue in the house around not being good enough or not being the type of family or people that will ever have money, right? Just not us. Those people are different from us. And so there's a lot of these kind of underlying things, that are put out through our families, through our immediate cultures, in our local communities, or where we live in the country, or whether it's just us as Americans, or wherever whatever culture you're from, as well as pop TV, and that's why in my training, I really one of my practices and one of my exercises is to do what we call a news blackout. Just shut off the TV and shut out any type of news, because it's all so negative, and it dramatically affects our subconscious programming. Once you cut that out and you start to use your brain to kind of analyze headlines and look for patterns, then there's a radical shift. It takes about 30 days, and people start to report that they just feel so much happier and so much more positive.
So let me check if I'm understanding correctly. Many of us have accepted a limiting conception of who we are and what we're capable of. It's a sort of negative story we tell ourselves about who we are. And the purpose of your core camp is to put people through something so extreme that they come out with a new concept of themselves, that in essence you're creating a controlled traumatic experience to break people down, open them up, and specifically rewrite this story they tell about who they are and rebuild them up and their story into something different. Is that the idea?
Man, I don't think I could have said that better, Tom. That was fantastic. And maybe I'll have to type that up and put it into my my marketing material. That's exactly what we do. It's a crucible experience that basically, that fire burns off, some of the impurities that are resting in their subconscious, this background of obviousness, and is replaced with much more powerful strategies. So one really simple strategy, and this is great for the listeners, is, we have this saying, and this is nothing new, but, what dog are you feeding, right? We have the dog of courage and the dog of fear. We tell this really simple story, and then anytime we see someone, with that look in their eye like, oh, shit, I can't do this, we just look at them and say, hey, ask yourself right now, what dog are you feeding? Is it the courage dog or fear dog? If it's the fear dog, you've got to stop it, right? And so we teach them to interdict that negative self-talk or that negative feeling, and we teach them to stand up straight and to breathe deeply so they have a powerful posture, and then energy is starting to course through their body, to look at their teammates and to say something encouraging to their teammates, which sends kind of a ripple effect, and it comes back to them 10 times, and all of a sudden now they're feeling more positive. And then we have them replace that statement with a positive mantra, and so we give them mantras, or they come up with their own. One of my favorite when I went through SEAL training was feeling good, looking good, ought to be in Hollywood. And I would say this over and over and over to keep myself, positively charged and keep my mind from wandering into that negative, cesspool that was going to drag me down. So that's, you hit the nail on the head. That's kind of what we do. That's an accelerated environment, that Kokoro camp, where we can crack people wide open, let those demons kind of fly out, and then we'll fill them up with good stuff.
So what I think is really interesting is that for the past 30 years, we've all been told that stress is, the number one health threat in the U.S., that it's the cause of all these health disorders, that we should eliminate it from our lives, even if we have to take pills to do so. And here I see you and people like you have developed mental toughness and an elite level of performance, specifically because you've constantly sought to challenge yourself beyond reason and, integrate kind of a constant dose of stress. How do you, what does that mean for people in terms of, those people who aren't going to do Kokoro camp, but basically the message seems to be you need to push yourself constantly to kind of reveal your potential. How is that the message, and are people supposed to? How are people supposed to apply that to what they're doing and how they're doing it day to day?
Yeah, you're right. You can't develop mental toughness without challenging yourself. I call it stressing yourself for success. I mean, there's no question the human body is, designed with that flight, fight, or freeze response. And you can interpret that we're not supposed to essentially stress ourselves out because we're supposed to avoid stress or eliminate stress even, which is impossible, by the way. because it's not good for our bodies. Well, that's not true. I mean, even in caveman days, it was the hunter who was able to control the stress response and turn it into a performance, behavior that got the most meat, right? Or was able to face down the charging tiger and organize a team to defeat him. And that was called leadership. And so, just because we have stress every day in our life doesn't mean it has to be debilitating or lead to dis-ease in our bodies. What we need to do is develop some strategies to turn that stress into success. And so, the strategies that we have, I think you put them up on the screen a little bit earlier. The first and main one is breathing, breath control. I mean, the breath, right, has become an unconscious, body function for most people. Ever since we're born, nobody says, hey, Mark, let's teach you how to breathe properly. And I would look at that person and say, well, I already am breathing. It's their breath coming in. If I wasn't breathing, I'd be dead. Well, yeah, but are you conscious of your breathing and how you're breathing? And there's literally about 7 or 8 different breathing techniques that I teach here at SealFit to develop power, to develop heat, to develop psychic energy, and to concentrate our mind and keep it focused. And so one of the most powerful stress control, arousal control tools is to basically get control of your breath, concentrate on it, slow it down, deepen it, use your full capacity of your lungs, use your diaphragm, and anytime you feel that stress coming on, you kick into this breath, and I would recommend a 4 count in, and then if you're in a calm environment, you're not a lot of activity, your heart rate is calm, maybe a 4 count hold, and then a 4 count exhale. If you're in an environment where your heart is racing and you need more oxygen, just slow it down and do a 4 count inhale and a 4 count exhale. And this, the SEALs actually teach this now. They didn't when I went through, but now they do, and they call it arousal control. And it helps dampen the effect, the physiological effect of that fight or flight or freeze response. And so all those, those hormones, that are coursing through your veins and kind of triggering your parasympathetic nervous system when you are exposed to stress, then are brought under control through breath control. Another thing we teach is collapsing your goals to very achievable, very short-term goals when you're in a stressful situation. It has an amazing effect on eliminating that gap between the known and the unknown, which is essentially what fear is. It's the gap between that, what I know to be true and real and possible and to this complete unknown. And so by collapsing your goals to what I call near-term goals that can provide directionality and momentum and give you small victories toward your larger goals, and that has a very, very powerful effect on, on mental toughness and on your stress response. And then third is really, learning to use your mind effectively, your creative mind, to visualize yourself succeeding, to visualize yourself as powerful, to visualize yourself as that leader, to visualize yourself as healthy, as thin, or whatever it is you want. And also to use that power of visualization to practice skills. The thought, the process of thinking is creating energy and form, even though it's utterly, very, very subtle, but your body physiologically doesn't really make any different distinction between practicing a skill, let's say, in the martial context, a sword stroke, or for someone in the business setting, the skill might be a communication dialogue or, anything really. You practice those skills in your mind and you dominate, you master them in your mind, and it has the same effect as if you were practicing it in the real world. And so these are all really important tools that can be learned by anybody to help mitigate the deleterious effects of long-term stress, as well as to be able to turn stress from kind of a high-stress environment into more performance-oriented actions.
So much of what you talk about and so many of these principles seem to come down to, self-awareness and this idea of knowing where you're at the moment, what your thoughts are and how they're having an effect on you, Is that something, do you delve into this idea of self-awareness quite a bit in your programs?
Big time. In fact, it's the whole first and second lesson of Unbeatable Mind. I call it the first premise. And the first premise is that you've got to win in your mind before you can even attempt to win on the battlefield. And that's a famous Sun Tzu quote. And so how do we do this? How do we develop this self-awareness? Well, it really it starts with cultivating a love for silence. And this is something that we don't spend much time alone or in silence in our society. I mean, we're always with our BlackBerries and iPhones and TV in the background, and running from one meeting to another, then jumping in the car and dealing with traffic and listening to the radio. And we never shut off the constant, incessant stream coming into our minds. And so as a result, our minds are like that choppy, turbulent water, the rapids, right? They're just bouncing all around. Very difficult to concentrate deeply on any one task. And even the idea of multitasking, everyone thinks, well, I've got to multitask. Well, you can't multitask. And research is finally showing that you can't. Your mind can only focus on one thing at a time. So a multitasker really is giving short shift to everything and doing, short little moments on different things and not doing anything really well. And so what we have people do is just start to sit in silence and watch their breath. Very classic breath awareness meditation that you'll find in every kind of spiritual tradition and all warrior traditions. And then try to cultivate a connection with what I call your witness, which is that part of you which is watching everything in spite of what your mind is doing. And cultivation with that witness then leads to greater awareness of both what's going on in your mind, your thoughts, as well as what's going on in your body and your emotions. And you develop what I would call a spaciousness. So you have that space, kind of Stephen Covey talked about this, that space between the stimulus and the response. Well, that's cultivated through silence, and you want to develop that spaciousness. One simple practice that I teach, and this is also relevant to all your listeners, I call it just the 3-breath practice. I didn't invent this. This comes out of, I think, Thich Nhat Hanh actually recommends this, and that is anytime, you have something that comes at you that is, typically going to stimulate a reactive response, typically driven by this background of obviousness, subconscious belief system or some variation thereof, is just to pause and to take 3 deep, controlled breaths before you respond. And so that has the double whammy of controlling the arousal response, so everything settles down in you. Your mind and your body settle in that 3-breath space, but it also allows that mind to kind of be aware of the stimulus that was arising and about to fly out of your mouth, and to maybe reorganize it for a much more powerful, response.
That's incredibly helpful. I wanted to go back to one specific principle. This is the time when we start integrating questions from our listeners. And one listener wanted to know, the idea of collapsing your goals seems like an incredibly important strategy. They wanted to know if you could give an example of how you specifically use that in the course of your day.
Okay, well, I'll start out with, how I kind of figured this out, and that was, during Navy SEAL Hell Week, and people were quitting all around me on Sunday night. We started Sunday afternoon at about 6 o'clock, and we weren't going to finish training until the following Friday, and we knew that we weren't getting any sleep. We're going to be training around the clock. So that means Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. Holy cow, that's a hell of a long time. And people would fixate on that, like, holy cow, I've got to make it to Friday. And guess what? At 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock on Monday morning, when it's dark and, they're miserable because they've been in the ocean now for 12 hours and they're freezing their butts off, and they can't see their way to Friday, and they quit. And most people will quit Sunday night or Monday night of Hell Week. And so the class could go from, 100 people down to 40 people in 24-hour period. And what I learned very quickly is, heck, I need to collapse my goal to just get the sunrise. Okay, just get the sunrise. So that sun comes up and it warms you, and it's like a new day, and it has an amazing effect on your spirit, and you're like, I made it. I made it one night. All right, I'm at sunrise. Okay, now let's just get to breakfast. And because breakfast, I'm going to be warm, and I'm going to fill my belly, so let's get to breakfast. And after breakfast, let me just get to lunch. And that's how I made it through Hell Week, one evolution, one meal at a time, and it was fantastic. And so I do this in my everyday life by focusing on, one project at a time, and then making sure I can finish it. Now, if it's a project like a writing project, which I'm doing quite a bit now, I've got to chunk that down into bite-sized chunks. And so what I'll do is say, okay, my short-term goal is not to finish this 40-page document, but to finish this section that I'm working on, right? And I won't move from my computer until I finish that section, and then I'm done. I'm like, check it off the box. I give myself a pat on the back. I feel like I've attained a small victory, and then I'll go out and do something else. I'll go, catch a workout, which is going to make me feel even better, or something, right? And so I'll organize my day around very, very succinct, clear, achievable victories that I know that I'm going to nail. And then guess what? By the end of the day, wow, I look back, I've really made some significant progress toward my, my major goals today. And it wasn't stressful, and, I eliminated that gap between the known and the unknown by making the unknown much, much more achievable. Does that help? I hope.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. On to another question from one of our listeners. They mentioned that they had experienced several losses and the death of several loved ones, and how this is obviously not nothing foreign to a SEAL. The question was, how do you push through, using some of these mental toughness techniques? How do you push through that kind of grief and get it to keep you going? Now,
this is a difficult one, but SEALs and through our training we develop what I call non-attachment, and it's when we're talking about loved ones, this is a difficult thing, right? Because we get very, very attached to our loved ones, but ultimately we don't take anything with us, right? Every day has the potential to be your last, and has the potential to be the last one for your loved ones as well. And so we really focus heavily on doing today what's important, doing today and living today as if it's your last. Okay. And if it happens to be the last day of a loved one, you certainly go through the grief process, but you don't want to dwell in the past, just like you don't want to dwell in the future. The only thing that can come from dwelling in the past and future is more suffering, more pain, because it's not real. It's either happened and it doesn't exist and it's just a figment of our imagination, and we don't even remember well in the past. It's estimated that about 10% of the things that happen in our past we remember with accuracy. The other 90% is just kind of filled in with what our hopes and desires are, or how it could have or should have been. And same thing with the future. The future is just a fantasy. So you got to live in the present. You really must collapse your focus and develop that awareness to go moment to moment and live in the present. And that's really the only way through grief, is to just be in the moment and to appreciate what you have right here, right now. And so, every morning you tell your loved ones how much you love them, because it might be the last day, right? And same thing with yourself. You tell yourself how much you love yourself, and you're going to go hit it hard, and you're going to accomplish great things today, and frankly, nothing else matters.
I'm going to get back to and ask you a question about what I hear as a real kind of spiritual streak in a lot of what you're talking about. But before I do, I wanted to, our own Sarah Grace, who's the program director, has a question. She mentioned she's been doing yoga for years and has had periods of serious running, and she definitely hears and feels you when it comes to the body-mind connection, and seeing how when she is doing this kind of exercise, her performance and mental clarity is top-notch. And she wants to know if there is a mind-body connection, and it clearly, it becomes clear to both your mind and your body that when you do a certain thing, you feel better. Why does it still take so much to keep herself, on the straight and narrow, rather falling into, these slothful kind of lazy periods when she does nothing at all. You would think that, your mind and your body having this, being so smart and seeing what, one kind of behavior would do would make it easy for you to just keep doing it, but it never seems to be easy.
Yeah, this is the Holy Grail discussion here. We have the saying that where the mind leads, the body follows. And interestingly enough, where the body leads, the mind will follow as well. So if you're feeling physically bad about yourself because you haven't worked out for 2 or 3 weeks, that's going to start to become an obsession. You're going to start to get a little bit bummed and depressed about your state of affairs, and eventually it might lead you back into the gym. And then all of a sudden you start to feel a little better. You're feeling good, looking good, ought to be in Hollywood. And then all of a sudden you just tell yourself, okay, I got it. I don't need this anymore. I'm going to go back and party a little bit and, take a break. I'm not going to work out on vacation. And guess what? We all, seem to yo-yo through that cycle. I think that's what Sarah's talking about. And so what I would say to that and what I teach is that developing the discipline is a daily habit. And people make it too big, right? They think, oh, God, I got to get back in shape. And it becomes, I need that 8-week challenge to get back in shape. And then they make this big energy around the 8 weeks, and then when it's done, boom, they don't work out again for 8 weeks. We see it all the time at our CrossFit gym. That's why I don't really like these challenges, even though we're about ready to launch one in 2 weeks. So discipline is, the whole root word of discipline is to be a disciple. It is to be discipled to something every day, something important. And there's nothing more important than you. And if we disassociate, if we have this duality between our mind and the body, and we think, okay, our mind is the most important part of us, so I'm going to go, I'm going to use my mind for work, and I'm going to cultivate it through training and education and all this, but then I leave my body alone. Well, what is that doing to your mind? Well, it's weakening it, and your mind is not going to be operating at its peak. Again, because your mind is more than that left brain cognitive IQ. In fact, it's estimated that is about 12% of your thinking mind. The other 88% of your mind happens at the creative and subconscious levels, and that's all that right brain and connection with your heart mind and what I would even say your belly mind, right? And so that's intuition and cultivating that sensory perception. So back to how do you get off the yo-yo and into a daily discipline? Well, you got to make it a habit to work out every day. How do you have it to work out every day? Well, you don't do Kokoro Camp every day, and you don't do a 2-hour workout every day. All you need is 15 minutes or half an hour. And so you turn it into a morning practice. This is what I teach in my Unbeatable Mind program is a morning practice. You wake up a half an hour earlier and you start out with a warrior yoga session, and you're getting, you're practicing all the skills as well as getting yourself a nice, legitimate functional movement type training session. And guess what? You go about your day. If you happen to play a sport or do something else in the day, great, that's gravy. But every day, 7 days a week, you move your body, and you don't make it an optional, can I get to the gym today type of thing. You do everything you need to do, you can do with your body and the size of a yoga mat right in your living room. So that's my answer to Sarah. Maybe she should join. We'll talk to her about it.
I love the notion of a belly mind, except the problem with both Sarah and I is that our belly mind often is more belly than mind. And, we go to lunch rather than to the gym. Right. I wanted to, I guess this is the question we'll end on. You talk about, and I think this is not something people would suspect, in this conversation, in this context with you, but you talk about breath and presence and non-attachment, and, there are links to a lot of kind of esoteric, definitely spiritual disciplines to a lot of your thinking. And I heard on, in prepping for this interview that one of the observations you made while you were a SEAL was that those soldiers who had a more spiritual kind of take on the world were generally the best of the best.
Right.
So what kind of when did you make that observation? What kind of spirituality are you talking about, and why do you think there's a connection between that and people who generally outperform others?
Yeah, this is such a great topic. When we're talking spirituality, it has zero to do with religion in my context. And there is, any religion, if you look at its root, has these, very similar spiritual practices that I'm kind of talking about, right? Contemplation, Christian contemplation, or Buddhist meditation. Zen is a form of Buddhist meditation which is very, very effective and applicable to developing concentration. The art of yoga, science, right, is a spiritual science or spiritual practice. Yoga is not just moving your body in these poses. That's actually one of 8 different limbs or levels of yoga. So again, the whole idea of spirituality to me and how I kind of first uncovered this was through my martial arts training. I was brought up as an Episcopalian, and we did the church on Sundays and whatnot, and, it was very interesting, and it was very much in my head, but I didn't really feel any connection, right? There was no, heartfelt connection to anything with that structured religion. But when I started to practice a martial art, that was really the first sense that I had that there actually was a spirit inside of me, right? That spark of the divine was inside of me. And I was stoking that flame by connecting with that witness, by connecting with it through silence, by connecting with it through deep contemplation. And it was growing stronger, or at least my connection to it was growing stronger. And so then when I got into the SEALs and I found myself, just literally sailing down the beach on long runs, saying my little mantra, my stupid little, feeling good, looking good mantra, and, practicing what I call a wide-angle vision gaze, where I wasn't using my mind to concentrate, I was letting it relax, kind of the same idea of letting your windows be, or the eyes be windows to the soul. What I was happening is I was settling into a deep, kind of meditative state while I ran. I did the same thing while I was swimming, and then I've learned to do this even during a hard workout. And it's all cultivating that spirit. Now, I use the term warrior spirit so I don't scare anyone off, but that warrior spirit is in all of us. And that's what I'm talking about. It's a very important part of us. And I talk about the mind-body connection, and what it really is a mind-body-spirit connection. And it's all one kind of big ball. It's not like there are 3 aspects, but they're all fused. And so we want to basically bring them all together in an integrated fashion through our training so that we can, lead with and make decisions with the full capacity of our being, with our cognitive IQ intelligence, with our emotional and heart intelligence, as well as with our spiritual intelligence. And we're not lopsided anymore. And I believe that a lot of our society in the Western world is lopsided, heavily skewed toward that cognitive IQ, and they're disassociated from their bodies and their spirits.
Can you just end on, we've talked about mind, body, spirit, the different disciplines that you used. I mean, you just brushed over them. To lead people on a very kind of concrete, practical note, what's the most important starting place for all this? Is it meditation, strength, physical, breathing? To kind of open the door on all of this, what's the one thing you can suggest to people listening that they can do today or tomorrow, and just start their journey to increase mental toughness?
Okay, I've already referenced this, but the most important thing that someone can do is to take some time alone during the day. 20 minutes would be ideal. 15 minutes if you can't do 20. 5 minutes if that's all you can afford. But just take some time alone to just sit quietly or stand quietly. You can walk quietly. Just be quiet. And I'm not talking about going out and thinking about being quiet. I'm talking about literally shutting the mind down and just observing the breath or observing, nature, something, okay? That's the first step. And then the second step would be to move your body. And you can combine those two, which is what yoga does very well. A good yoga program is designed to get you to stop thinking while you're moving. And so then, you get the combination of mental concentration and awareness practice combined with a physical movement practice. Very, very effective.
Is it a particular kind of yoga?
Any yoga is good. It's really the intent you bring to yoga. Don't look at it as a fitness class or a flexibility class. Those are tangential benefits. The primary is to breathe and concentrate on the breath or on the depth of the pose, not let your monkey thinking mind dominate the training. Same thing if you're a martial artist, or Tai Chi is another fantastic meditation and movement. So if you want to get a twofer and really start moving the body, getting the blood flowing, starting to develop that warrior spirit, and calm the mind and get in connection with the witness, then something like Tai Chi or dance or something that is a concentration practice through movement. It's very, very effective.
That will do it. Absolutely fascinating. Our time is up, but Mark, thank you for sharing with us today. The information has been really, really wonderful, and thank you especially for all of your service. For people wanting to find out more about you and your programs, can you tell people where they can go to get more information?
Sure. Our primary website for the training programs is sealfit.com, SEALFIT.com. I see it on your screen there. And at SealFit, they could also find information about the Unbeatable Mind program, or they can go. We have a separate website for that. It's at unbeatablemind.com, spelled just like it sounds. And that's the program that would be probably the place for most people to start. And we have everything I talked about, we dive into in that program, and it's a 12-month program. And the reason I did it for 12 months is because, most people don't like to commit to something that long. They their mind flips and they want to try the next thing. Well, I kind of slow people down and say, let's just take our time. 12 months later, you'll be a different person, but take it 1 month at a time and practice this stuff every day. So I've got a yoga program in there called Warrior Yoga, and all these practices are part of that program, and I introduce them, through both writings, videos, and audio in that Unbeatable Mind program.
Go check that out. Everyone who's watching or listening, thank you all. You can also connect with me about anything on LinkedIn or Twitter at TallRoz, and that will do it. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for joining us. For transcripts of this program and a schedule of our upcoming events, please subscribe to our blog at blog.mygreenlight.com.